On a hot summer evening in 1890, in one of the historic streets of Tiflis, a young merchant named Mason was eagerly preparing to embark on a long caravan journey. Mason had collected valuable fabrics and spices from various villages in Anatolia, which he planned to take to Austria. This journey was to be the biggest trade deal of Mason's life. A few days after leaving Tiflis, the caravan began to traverse the desolate and rugged roads of Anatolia. Mason and a few fellow caravan members preferred to travel at night to avoid the scorching heat of the day. However, each night, Mason had an eerie feeling that someone or something was watching them. This feeling grew stronger with the howls coming from the depths of the forest and the distant, indistinguishable screams echoing through the night. On the 10th day of the journey, the caravan reached an old Greek village. The village appeared abandoned. The streets were empty, and most of the houses were in ruins. Mason and the caravan members decided to take a short break and spend the night there. They settled in an old inn in the village square. At midnight, Mason began to hear strange noises while trying to sleep in the inn. Footsteps echoed through the building, and whispers filled the air, unsettling Mason. However, it seemed that only Mason could hear these sounds. The other caravan members dismissed his concerns, saying they heard nothing. Mason decided to leave the inn and walk through the village streets. He soon came across an old well in a dark alley, with strange beams of light emanating from it. The next morning, Mason realized that one of the caravan members was missing. Despite their extensive search efforts, they couldn't find their friend, and the caravan had to continue their journey. However, this disappearance only heightened Mason's sense of unease. He recalled that his missing friend had last been seen near the well, and decided to learn more about it. As the journey continued, Mason's feelings of unease grew stronger. At night, shadows roamed around the caravan, and Mason heard strange whispers that drove him to the brink of madness. One night, Mason saw a shadow following the caravan. He followed the shadows to the village's abandoned school building. Inside the school, he found old books, torn notebooks, and strange symbols on the walls. In one room, he discovered the belongings of his missing friend, but his friend was nowhere to be found. Mason decided to return to the village. This time, he wasn't alone. The other caravan members, now sharing Mason's concerns, decided to accompany him. Mason was determined to bring peace to the souls of his missing friends and to end the village's curse. Upon their return to the village, they met an old woman in a dilapidated house. She told them that the village was cursed and that everyone who lived there had disappeared one by one. The curse, she said, was the result of a tragedy that occurred centuries ago. Mason and the caravan members decided to stay in the village to solve its mystery and end the curse. In the old woman's house, they examined ancient documents detailing the village's history. They discovered terrible secrets about the village's founding family, who had performed dark rituals to protect the village, sacrificing many innocent lives in the process. Among these secrets were the details of a horrific ritual conducted in the village's old church. Mason and the caravan members decided to stay longer in the village to find the source of the curse. One night, armed with ancient documents, they went to the old church. Inside, they found the symbols and materials needed for a dark ritual. However, as they began the ritual, terrifying entities appeared within the church. These shadowy figures advanced towards them. While trying to escape their attack, Mason heard a voice urging him to complete the ritual. After escaping the church, strange events in the village intensified. Shadows roamed around the caravan at night, and the whispers drove everyone to the edge of insanity. One night, Mason and the caravan members saw a shadow following them. They followed it to an abandoned cemetery, where they found the bodies of their missing friends. The bodies were eerily laid out on a large stone in the middle of the cemetery, with their faces frozen in expressions of terror. As Mason and the caravan members surveyed the cemetery, they noticed that the inscriptions on the tombstones were moving. Each tombstone bore the names of the village's lost residents, including Mason and his companions. Terrified, they tried to retreat, but a dark figure emerged from behind one of the tombstones and grabbed them. When they looked into the figure's eyes, they saw the souls of their lost friends. The dark figure tried to drag Mason and the caravan members into the depths of the cemetery. However, Mason, driven by determination and courage, managed to resist. Using the ritual documents, he found a way to stop the figure. Mason's bravery inspired the others, and together they fought against the dark entity. The figure finally retreated, and the cemetery fell silent. Mason and the caravan members decided to leave the village immediately. As they moved away from the village, the curse's grip on them began to loosen. Finally, when they reached a safe distance, they took a deep breath. Mason knew that forgetting this horrific experience would be difficult, but he believed they were free from the curse. Mason and the caravan members continued their journey and successfully completed their trade deal in Austria. However, for Mason, this journey was more about the struggle to protect himself and his friends than making the biggest trade deal of his life. Upon returning to Tiflis, Mason chose not to tell anyone about his ordeal, but the events had left deep scars on his life. He made great efforts to forget what had happened in the village, but at night, he could still hear those dreadful screams echoing in his ears. After returning to Tiflis, Mason tried to resume his work. However, the echoes of the screams and the shadows in his mind continued to haunt him at night. For a few months, he kept himself busy with trade, but the unease within him never faded. One day, at a market in Tiflis, Mason found an old manuscript at a bookseller's stall. He believed this manuscript might contain more information about the village's past and decided to buy it. Upon carefully examining the manuscript, Mason discovered new clues about the dark secrets behind the village's events. The manuscript detailed the rituals performed in the village's old church and how the curse had started. It also contained instructions on how to end the curse. Mason decided to test the accuracy of this information and return to the village to put an end to the curse once and for all. Mason, along with a few brave caravan companions, decided to return to the village. When they arrived, the village was still abandoned and silent. Mason and his friends went to the old church and began performing the ritual described in the manuscript. However, during the ritual, terrifying entities reappeared and attacked Mason and his friends. As they tried to complete the ritual, Mason and his friends discovered deeper truths about the curse. This curse had resulted from a pact made by the village's founding family. To protect the village and gain wealth, the family had made a deal with dark entities, sacrificing innocent souls in return. To complete the ritual, Mason and his friends also needed to sacrifice their own souls. Upon learning this horrifying truth, Mason realized he couldn't sacrifice his own soul. He believed there had to be another way to end the curse. Mason and his friends engaged in a final battle against the dark entities. During the struggle, Mason noticed a detail in the manuscript. To end the curse, they needed to bring peace to all the innocent souls in the village. Mason and his friends performed the complete ritual to bring peace to all the lost souls in the village. They faced many challenges and fought against the dark entities during this process. However, in the end, all the innocent souls found peace, and the curse on the village was lifted. The dark entities disappeared, and the village fell silent once more. After ending the curse, Mason and his friends left the village. Upon returning to Tiflis, Mason vowed never to speak of his horrific experience again. However, the events left deep scars on his life. Mason made great efforts to forget what had happened in the village, but at night, he could still hear those dreadful screams echoing in his ears. As years went by, Mason continued his life, bearing the marks of what he had experienced in the village. Despite continuing his trade successfully, the unease within him and the shadows of the past never left him. Yet, Mason realized that these horrific events had made him stronger and more determined. While it was impossible to erase the marks of the past, Mason learned to look to the future with hope. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my channel and like my video. Thank you for your support.